Welcome to the very first episode of the Artsy Hustle podcast. My name is Adam Kubota. I am a bass player, and I play in a band called Postmodern Jukebox, and sometimes I play in another band called the Hot Sardines. In addition to that stuff, I have a law degree, and not that long ago, I was working in arts administration. And when I first thought of doing this podcast, I just wanted it to be a discussion for artists and musicians and freelancers to help them better navigate the ins and outs of the gig economy. But obviously, some things have happened in the past 3 months, specifically the COVID-19 pandemic, and that has completely changed the formulation of what it means to work in the gig economy. So for right now, we are going to be talking a lot about how to get through this situation that we're in and just looking around to see what other people are doing to get through this and to put food on the table and keep a roof over their head. To that end, we're very lucky to get the guest that we have for the first podcast, and it is Congresswoman Shelley Pingree from Maine, and she is the co-chair of the Congressional Arts Caucus, and she is a very, very knowledgeable and personable person, and just, again, very, very fortunate that she agreed to do this podcast. That said, this is my very first podcast. We put it together in the middle of a pandemic. Obviously, I couldn't sit in a room with our guest, and we did it over Zoom. So there are some fairly strong imperfections with the audio that I wish weren't there, but I think that there is so much in the podcast, so much that Representative Pingree says in there that is practical, things that I didn't know, and I think that any artist, musician, or freelancer will get so much out of hearing what she has to say. So without any further ado, let's listen to my conversation with Congresswoman Shelley Pingree. All right. Hey, everybody. Here we have Representative Shelley Pingree from Maine, and I am really excited to have you on my podcast. And I don't know if I told you, but this is actually my very first edition of the podcast. So I'd like to have somebody of your stature is very, very exciting for my first podcast. A very auspicious beginning. Yeah. And where are you right now?
So I am home, like every other member of Congress. We're mostly kind of, except when we have gone to vote, we're locked down in our homes. And I happen to live on an island 12 miles off the coast of Maine. So Maine has a lot of year-round island communities. Sometimes people think it's a little, dot of rock with no electricity, but no, we have a we have a school, we have a community, cool. And I actually, when I'm not in Congress, I run a organic farm. So we're still operating the farm.
Wow. Okay. Sounds like you have a pretty cool setup out there.
It's nice to be home. Uh-huh.
Nice. Great. Well, I hope everything is going well in your corner of the country. So I just want to get started with just a little bit of context about, who you are and what is the Congressional Arts Caucus.
Well, the Congressional Arts Caucus has been here has been a part of Congress for a very long time. And I'm the Democratic co-chair. We have a Republican co-chair as well. And it was, for many, many years, it was run by Louise Slaughter from upstate New York. And she was sort of a grande dame of the arts. Everybody knew Louise. She fought every year for the arts funding. And when she passed away, I was lucky enough to take it over. It's particularly meaningful to me because even though I come from a very small rural state, we care deeply about the arts, and we understand how important arts funding is to many of our communities, to our tourism industry. And for a lot of small towns, federal funding like through the NEA and NEH is the only way we ever get the ability to fund for the arts. So I sit on the Interior Appropriations Committee as well. And that subcommittee is the one that funds our arts programs, museums, the Smithsonian, NEA, NEH. So we go to battle every year to make sure that there is federal dollars, and there should be many, many more. But we get whatever we can, and that's part of the role of the Arts Caucus, is to support it, to help our colleagues understand the economic impact of the arts in their communities, which is just as true, from one side of the country to another, and critically important right now when people are hurting, and we need you guys more than ever. So we just want to keep you all staying afloat and in business.
Thank you. Well, I would say thank you for being a champion of the arts and going to bat for us. And I think maybe a lot of people maybe have misconceptions about, who are artists. And it's so many people, and so many people are working in theaters and galleries, and as visual artists and all of the above. So this whole situation it's affecting everybody really profoundly. But, for artists like myself, I have no idea when there's going to be a theater, opening up so I can play a concert. And as I've mentioned to you over email, that I'm the bass player for Postmodern Jukebox. And I heard that you're a fan.
I am. Yeah.
Very cool. Have you seen us play before?
I have never been able to see you play, but I've seen you online, and I have some of your music, on my iPhone, so I can play it through my sound system. So yeah, no, you guys are great. I love you. And I'll have to make sure when the world comes back together again, it's allowed to go on tour, and you come to Portland, Maine or somewhere, we'll be there.
We were supposed to be playing at the State Theater a few weeks ago in Portland. So, and that concert had to be canceled. So whenever it gets rescheduled, we'll have to have you over, and that'd be really cool. Yes, please. So what I want to do with this podcast is I want to have, somebody like you who's in Congress and voted on the CARES Act, sort of explain a little bit about how it would affect, people in the who are artists and musicians. So I guess I'll just start with Just tell us how money from the CARES Act can reach, artists and musicians. And, some of them maybe aren't qualifying for unemployment, in the traditional metric of that. And many people are on 1099. So I think there's a bit of confusion in my part of the world about how that money would reach artists and musicians.
Yeah, and look, I don't blame people for being confused. It was an enormous amount of change, happened overnight. All of a sudden everybody's out of work. And then Congress had to come in and try to put together, as best as we could. We have to get Republicans and Democrats to agree on how to spend money, and that's never easy. Yeah. So maybe the perfect program that I wouldn't have designed isn't exactly what we got. But there's 2 or 3 ways that I think artists and people who are self-employed, 1099 workers can benefit from, and I'm happy to talk those through with you. So
please.
Let's just start with unemployment. Unemployment is normally only available to those people who work for an employer, and the employer has to pay in on the account, and then you're eligible for it if you're laid off, you're terminated, you can't, you don't quit. But we created pandemic unemployment insurance under this bill. So it basically covers anyone whose job is affected because of the pandemic, and obviously a touring musician or someone who worked backstage at a theater or anything related to the arts that's now been shut down qualifies for that. So that can be self-employed, 1099, independent contractors, gig workers, whatever people call themselves. Now, it varies from state to state because unemployment insurance is funded by the federal government, but it comes to the states. So, and each state has to set up their own systems. And one of the biggest challenges so far has been because this is a brand new program and states aren't used to certifying people who don't have a payroll stub. They're still actually literally trying to set up the computer systems to make this work. But the way it works is that you qualify. You get whatever you would have qualified for in that state, the dollar amount, and that varies from state to state. But most importantly, the federal government has mandated that another $600 a week is added on. So let's say you're in a state where because of what you used to earn, you would have gotten like $230 a week. Well, now you get $830 a week. So the important things to know are that every state doesn't have this fully operational. I can't tell you off the top of my head, but there's probably 15 states right now where you can go online and it'll show you exactly how to go through the process. In some states where it's not operational, it isn't yet in Maine, and we're hoping this week it will be. But what happens is people are unemployed, and then they apply for unemployment, and then they get rejected. So then they go home and they say, "Oh, that didn't work. shoot, I thought I was supposed to get it, and they never go back again. So the important thing to understand is even if you got rejected once, it may be because the new system wasn't entered into the computers. And, you can imagine these are, federal and state government computers. They're antiquated. They're using many of them old things. I mean, in our unemployment department, we're a small state. We had 14 employees. Now we've ramped up to something like 200 to try to handle the load. And you can just imagine the magnitude in California or New York or anywhere else.
Yeah, it's a
but
scramble.
The important point is you qualify. So there would be very few circumstances that you don't. I'm not even exactly clear yet because we haven't seen in our state what they're going to make you submit. But you qualify. You qualify.
Okay.
And all you need to do is be in a covered kind of employment that was shut down because of the pandemic. And there's just no question that that's true for almost everybody like you and that you work with.
Okay. All right. That is really good to know. So I guess the bottom line I'm picking up from this is just to keep, checking in on the state systems and what your state is doing. And yeah, I mean, for example, I was on the IRS site and they finally updated the section about the stimulus checks, and you could actually check your status and update your bank info, which you couldn't do a week ago. So all the musicians I know were really excited about the fact that you could actually, get some insight about when you might get your check. So that was very, very cool.
And just to be clear about that, of course, that's in the CARES Act, and I'm glad you made that point because once again, you need to find out if that's on its way, and if it isn't, you need to check in to see is it because you didn't file, and there's a rapid way to file for 2018 and 2019. They need to know who you are, and also if you wanted to come direct deposit into your bank account, you can use that site as a way to alter that. So they're not sending it to some address that you used to live at, but you probably don't live at anymore because you guys move around the country all the time and, don't always have a permanent address, but you have a bank account. So that's important.
Yeah, it's definitely, that song, Papa was a Rolling Stone. I kind of feel like that way as a touring musician sometimes. Yeah. And people always ask me where I live, and I'm like, well, I'm in LA sometimes I'm in New York City. So yeah, but thankfully all the checks come to my parents' house in the Bay Area. So so let's move on to some of the Small Business Association funds. So under this program, can musicians who hire musicians for gigs under 1099, can they qualify for the paycheck protection loans? So do the 1099 hires, do they count as employees or are they independent contractors? And doesn't matter if someone musician has some sort of small company like an LLC or an S corp when they go to apply for these types of loans.
Okay, so it doesn't matter if you're a LLC or an S corp; they're basically equal. So if let's say you are your own small business, you're either self-employed or, as you said, you have contract workers. You are eligible for the PPP program. The way that works is it covers the costs of you doing business, but 75% of what you spend has to be on the payroll of your previous employees, and they all have to be employed again. Just to be clear, you cannot, 1099 workers are not covered. They had to have been payrolled employees. So if you are an artist, an arts organization, and you have those, you can apply for the PPP, keep them on the payroll, and everything is forgiven at the end of 2 months as long as you kept everybody on the payroll. And you can use a quarter of it to pay your rent, your utilities, anything else. Got it. Now, that doesn't mean that if you have 1099 employees and you are an LLC that you can't apply for it. The thing is, you just have to apply as if you were a self-employed, as if you're a small business and you're the business. Your 1099 workers, the people who have been working with you via contract, are just better off going to unemployment because they don't qualify. They're not really considered your employees because they're contractors. They can still be covered that way. And in some circumstances, some businesses have found that they will make more money during this period under the pandemic unemployment insurance. So they're still going to be fine. And you can still apply too. You just can't apply using them as your employees, but you can be your only employee and you can get the PPP.
Okay, that is good to know.
You can pay yourself. You can pay for some of your overhead expenses. It's a little bit more confusing, and the best way to sort out how to do it is if you have a relationship with a bank, if you have a banker, even, your small town banker, all in the most recent package, we wrote in some restrictions that said that some of the money had to specifically go to community banks, credit unions,
Great.
Unusual lending systems that tend to go to, minority communities or places that are, just smaller rural places. So there ought to be a banker who's willing to serve you. If not,
Nice.
there will be, and they're the ones to ask the questions. Or there are some SBA services. One's called SCORE, one's called SBDC. They're in every community. They're volunteer, they're free. Women's business development centers, and they're just there to help you do these loan applications. So look them up. They can be your guide through this. And many of them are helpful people to know, in the future of your business, because they're just there to advise you in your business. So I guess that's you do have to have a Schedule C for filing. You have to have filed under a Schedule C. But you would if you were an independent business, even if you were paying 1099 workers.
Okay, great. Some of this terminology is a little bit new to me, so I'll be definitely hitting up the Google searches after this, so I know a little bit about it. So you're saying at this point,
send us an email. We'll be happy to.
Okay, thank you. Wow, that's very accessible. Appreciate that. So you're saying that for those types of loans, the first entity to whom you should turn, it would be your bank.
They get processed through a bank. Even though they're an SBA loan, they're actually a bank loan that has a 100% guarantee by the SBA. So the bank doesn't take on the risk that you'll default or that you won't pay. And the SBA also generates the funds that completely pay back your bank at the end of it. Now, there's an EIDL, that's a emergency injury disaster loans. That's another SBA loan. Again, it's worth asking your banker about that, because you are an emergency disaster. Suddenly your business, your livelihood was wiped out. You can apply for that loan, and within 3 days, they have to give you a $10,000 grant that you can use to sort of keep the lights on, keep food on your table, whatever it is you use it for. And even if you choose not to take the loan after you've been approved, you don't have to give back the grant. So it's also a really good source of, virtually a grant support, which is what we were trying to get out here, because we understand that individuals and small businesses don't want to take out a loan right now, because you don't know if you'll be back to work in June, or if it'll be September, or if we won't go into concert halls for a year. I mean,
yes.
We just don't know.
Fingers
so we don't
crossed.
want you having a loan for $35,000 and somebody in August says, "Where's your payment?" And you're like,
yes.
So
it's like I have some friends that are, buying homes, and they're, applying for mortgages right now, and they're getting accepted for the mortgages, but they're like, well, it's a fingers crossed situation, which is not exactly where you want to be, when it comes to paying back a bank. So I understand, why you would pick the grant route. So I guess another topic that a lot of people are concerned about is just like the criteria for receiving some of these SBA, like the PPP and other types of grant loans. The reporting is that like Ruth Chris, Steakhouse was one to receive it, and which has a lot of people who are small business people. They're scratching their head about, well, if the big guys are getting at these these funds first, and then they went away, it's like, so how is this money even going to reach me when obviously it's kind of trickling down, if that.
Yeah, well, people have the right to be extremely angry about it. And, even as members of Congress, we should always know what's going to happen when we do something, but there are unintended consequences to everything that we do. And, and sometimes, Congress has a different idea of how this is going to work out than the current administration. So, we wanted more oversight. We wanted to know from the very beginning who's getting these loans, what the size of their business is, which banks are loaning the most. And we had a very bad feeling from the first weekend when we saw that all the big banks had given out a lot of money very quickly. The only good news is that, thanks to reporters and, just information that's out there in SEC filings, and suddenly people could see that Ruth's Chris Steakhouse or some other huge chains, full credit goes to the people who just said, hey, wait a minute, I'm not going to Shake Shack. Maybe I love your burgers, but I'm not going there if you're going to take money away, which could have gone to a little business because you've got investors and, equity, and you can survive this storm. So the power of embarrassment has helped us to retrieve some of that money, which is actually now back in the pool, tens of millions of dollars, which is not how it was intended. And I think, as I mentioned to you, we wrote a provision into this, as we refund, we put more money back in there, but we said, look, some of it has to be specifically targeted to small banks, to other loan places that tend to deal with smaller lenders, just because we want to get more money of that where it was supposed to go. It's hard because a lot of big institutions, you're a chain restaurant, you've already got a team of compliance officers. You've got a bank that's happy to work with you. The bank made money on doing these loans as a percentage of how much they loaned out. So for a lot of big banks, they're like, hey, I'd rather do a few big loans and make back my money rather than all these little, $1,000 to $5,000 loans or $15,000 loans. So it's wrong. It's just totally wrong.
Right. So what we're saying is the criteria for picking who gets the loans is determined by banks, and if the banks have the sort of channels in place to approve these loans, faster to certain clients, and they maybe have some incentive to approve to some of the bigger clients, then they're going to move in that direction. So is it making these applications, is it sort of like a race against time, and hopefully your institution is one that will get to your paperwork faster? Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, again, I it's not a perfect system because I'm afraid that even the second amount of money we put out there won't last very long. So the sooner people do it, the better off they are, and all the more reason to go if you have a relationship with a small community bank or a credit union, somebody who's going to look upon you as like, you're a valued customer. I want you and your family to stay whole. I want you to keep, surviving and paying the mortgage on your house. So I'm going to help you get this loan as fast as I can, as opposed to, Bank of America or places that may not have the same. Now maybe the branch manager at your Bank of America is helping you out. So I don't want to be, completely dismissive, but we found that a lot of the big banks were loaning out a lot of the big money too fast.
Okay.
And we're going to have to do this again. And honestly, I don't want to get philosophical here, but I think we should have taken a different approach. I think we should have just looked at what people were, getting for payroll or income and just say, we have to guarantee this to America for as long as they are in trouble. And when we get to the other side, we'll go back to normal. But that's all we're doing through unemployment insurance. That's what the extra $600 a week is for. That's what this program does. It just gives you the money to keep your employees on the payroll. And so we should have just said, look, the most important thing is people have money coming in the door. It shouldn't be this one random check from the IRS that you got to wait for, and one program that you got to apply for and then it runs out of money. Yeah. You wait in line for unemployment for 6 weeks before they finally are established to do your thing. So, by the way, on the unemployment thing, if you do get that, it's retroactive. So whatever day you went out of work, once you qualify for unemployment insurance, they have to give you the checks that they didn't give you because the system wasn't up and running. So
okay, that is a really good point. Yeah, that's good. Well, I am lucky that I've been receiving some of these funds. So I'm really grateful, that the government is taking some action to make it so I'm not going into economic free fall. So I really, I just try to be grateful about that. But it is, there's a lot of different, the stimulus checks and the CARES and the, and the state unemployment. And I'm just trying to take these, it can seem a little bit patchwork, if you don't know all the acronyms, I don't even, I'm still, not the PUA versus the PUC. And I think it's there's so many right now. But this is getting really helpful for us. So I guess I just wanted to say, I checked out your story that you were quoted in, not your story, but you were quoted in a story in the New York Times recently. And it was, it was about during the Depression era and all the big federal programs there that were supporting the artists through the Depression, and I'm feeling hopeful that this isn't going to be like a Great Depression style event in our history, but it was very impressive the level of creativity that the government used back then to provide work for artists. I mean, really, and I know I'm familiar with some of the works that were made during that time, like the musical Cradle Will Rock. It's really there's a great movie about it that came out like 10 years ago or something. But is there anything? I don't think we're going to get into that period. We're not going to revisit some of those programs exactly like that. But is there anything you see kind of coming down the pipe, maybe that is feasible? Maybe some type of student loan forgiveness. Art schools can be very expensive. Or some sort of health insurance. Remuneration for healthcare costs. Is there anything you see like that?
Well, I guess one thing about this whole catastrophe we're going through is it's really shown us the weaknesses in the system. So for a lot of things that people like me think should change, like we should have universal single-payer healthcare. So everybody isn't thinking like, oh no, I lost my job. Now I don't have healthcare. I get unemployment, but I lost my healthcare benefits, or I never had them in the first place because I'm a gig worker. What do I do? Who's going to cover if I get sick? All that. So, I think it will give us an increased push to go back. We have, made sure that testing is free. We're trying to make sure that coverage for treatment is free. But I think we have to revamp the system, and this should remind us that like a lot of people out there just be covered. On the student loans, there is some forbearance for a few months. So anybody who has a student loan should definitely check into that. It applies to programs that come through the federal government. But again, I'm all in favor of doing something so students don't carry this crazy burden of debt. You could go to a wonderful college and, be on your way to medical school and decide that you had an incredible talent as a musician and just say, this is where I belong. And then all of a sudden you're like, holy moly, how am I going to pay back all that pre-med loan?
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be that way. Also, we did put funding into the NEA and NEH through this. I think they each got about $75 million. And the NEA, National Endowment for the Arts, has put all their grants out already, which went to institutions that had previously gotten grants for them. So, there may be artists who are actually now getting some money because it went to the symphony in their small town that they now play for. But every state has a chunk of money that they can loan out. Not loan out, they come out as grants specifically to artists. It's nowhere near the WPA, but it's out there just to really keep artists afloat. You don't have to, it can be used for your operating costs and organization for operating costs, which wasn't true. And we're going to try to get more money into that. And lastly, I'd just say, we've got all these operational programs that just have to be fixed. How we pay for college, how you get healthcare, how we keep people safe or gig workers. In Maine, we have 1 million people and 100,000 people are self-employed. So, they're fishermen, they're painters, artists, they're everything in our state. So we're very familiar with what happens when
Right.
One chart just showed that Maine might be the most dramatically affected economy of any state in the country as this goes.
Wow.
We're heavily tourist dependent.
Yeah.
We got to sell you lobsters in the summer, and if the restaurants don't open up, who's going to eat all these things? We have we have artists. We're very independent. We don't like to, we don't have a lot of big companies. We work for ourselves, small farmers. Anyway,
I get that.
We've got to have a safety net for everybody. But the last thing I'll say is, we have a pretty serious plan in Congress for this package or the next one, and there's some bipartisan agreement on this, that it has to be what we call a stimulus package. It has to go into infrastructure. Like, it has to be about rebuilding roads and bridges and broadband and the kinds of things that you can stimulate new jobs, get people back to work, but also improve the future of our country. And that is the absolute appropriate place to have a WPA-like section in the bill, and we'll certainly be fighting for it. It may be a long shot. We don't all, we can't always convince our colleagues to do the right thing here, but as you said, that was a very well-regarded, well-thought-out system that just reflected the fact that people shouldn't, they shouldn't have to stand in food lines. And we shouldn't waste all this talent, and we should make sure that all of you are able to come back and be our artists of the future, because we need you now more than ever.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to look for the positives in this, and that I'm thinking that people are realizing the importance of social contact with each other, and how important it is to have connections, and the arts, and just how great it is just to we take it for granted that we can just go out to a bar and see like a bar band play and have a beer. I mean, that's just like such a great, if I could do that tonight somehow magically without there being serious ramifications, that would be like the best night of my whole year. So hopefully this reminds people of the importance of the arts and the humanities, and the the value that we bring to everyone's life. So I'm hoping that when things get back to normal, and who knows when that's going to be, but that there's going to be a renewed interest in arts and these types of experiences. And for right now, I know, like we were saying before, I mean, musicians are already living on a pretty thin margin. So anything that the government can do to help us get through this is greatly appreciated. And so. Just to wrap this up, I just want to, just to catch all, is there anything else that you could think of, that would be good, for people in my position to know during this time? Any of the resources that you could think of, or?
Well, I don't have a list in front of me, but I know I'm pretty sure on the National Endowment for the Arts page. Trying to think about where else, but. There's a variety of foundations and organizations that have set up funds literally just to help artists, stay afloat. Small one-time grants to help you pay your rent, the things that just are make or break it, whether you, can hold out till your band is back on tour, or till the Broadway show that you're in comes back alive again, or the community theater is open up. I mean, so there are some resources like that. And I guess it's a time when, nobody should hesitate to go to the community food bank and to apply for food stamps, or, look for some rent relief from your landlord. Just, everybody's got to do whatever they've got to do. And there's no, there's no shame in it. You all do such a wonderful thing for all the rest of us. And, we should have a stronger safety net to make sure that everybody's taken care of. So I will say that I think America has thoroughly enjoyed this opportunity to watch all of you play music in your living rooms. All the Zoom concerts and things I think are just fascinating for people, and thank you for doing that. It's very uplifting, and I know everybody loves that when you see the variety of them that are popping up.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's something that we still got to make music any way we can. It's just it's a need for us. So it's been cool to see how people have been very resourceful about trying to find ways to collaborate online. I know Postmodern Jukebox has been holding these concerts, and it's gone really well, because people are really they just need to see some art and some beauty in their life, and things like that. Even just watching like the NFL draft the other day was like really like major exciting for me. So all right. Well, Shelley, thank you so much for talking to me, and I think this is going to be very, very valuable information. And is there any way that people can follow you on Twitter or social media, so they can get updates about arts related news that you might be putting out there?
Yeah, let me just look. I think that's pathetic. I should have all those things written down.
Yeah.
But my name is spelled Shelley, Chellie, and last name Pingree, Pingree. And we're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and post frequently. You can also contact our office. You can email me anytime. If you just have a question, my email is literally my name, Shelley@pingree.com. And I'll direct you to the right source. So whatever we can do, we want to make sure you all stay afloat.
Very cool. I think we all appreciate your information, your know-how, and your accessibility. And I really appreciate your time. And maybe I'll see you at a PMJ show in the not too distant future.
Great. Thanks. Stay safe. Thanks a lot.
Take care. Thank you.